putting a $10,000.
Yeah, 10.5.
So chances are, I mean, you're working from home. Looks Wanda, are you?
Come on.
You know, be good.
Oh yeah. We can pass the PO.
We can?
Yeah. It will be negative until the amendment appropriations. We put 30,000 in and it's negative 5.5 right now. On a PO, money has to go get spent. Yeah.
Okay, good afternoon. Please join me in the pledge, those of you. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Officers, please call the roll.
All right, Trustee Westberger. Here. Trustee Sierra. Here. Trustee Sword.
Here.
Fiscal officers here. Superintendent of Public Works.
Here.
Township Administrator.
Here.
Chief of Police.
Here.
Chief of Fire.
Here.
Our next meeting is September 1st, 2021 at 12 p.m. at 3820 Cleveland Avenue. I'd like to make a motion to accept the agenda with flexibility. I'll second.
Rich, Trustee Jesberger.
Yes.
Trustee Sword. Trustee Sierra.
Yes. I'd like to make a motion to approve the August 4th, 2021 meeting minutes.
I'll second. You ready for the roll call?
Is there any discussion?
Okay. Trustee Sword.
August 6th, 2021 meeting. I'll second.
Trustee Jesberger.
Yes.
Trustee Sword.
Yes.
Trustee Sierra.
Yes. And we're ready for the fiscal report.
And on the back of the meeting minutes. All right, the July fiscal report. July $701.18. Revenue last month was $301,978.04. Expenditures in the month of July was $416,335.83, leaving us with an overall fund balance on July 31st of $7,427,343.39.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the July fiscal report. I'll second.
Trustee Jesberger. Trustee Sword.
Yes.
Trustee Sierra.
Yes. Fiscal officer Steele, you want to make that?
Just a reminder that 2 weeks from today, or September 1st, maybe here over 2 weeks, the township will be hosting a fiscal forum at 7 p.m. at 3820 Cleveland Avenue. And a representative from the Franklin County Auditor's Office will be there if folks want to learn more about the property evaluation process or make sure our dogs are registered with the county, things like that. And I'll have a short to participate in. I don't know what the demand will be, but we'll be following the COVID protocols. So if for some reason we're overwhelmed with a lot of people, we may have to have people just go through in shifts. And that'll overall be a good problem, but I'm not expecting that.
Thank you. Trustee Jesberger?
the agenda, I have trustee meeting times. Even before residents were commenting on social media, when I had been doing the chat with the trustee, I had residents asking me about meeting times, days, and if there was ever thought to moving them to the evening, or at least having one evening meeting for those who are working full-time jobs and cannot make it. So I wanted to start a discussion to see what the board thought about different ideas on maybe having one noon meeting and then one evening meeting, especially with the school year starting.
What are you thinking for the afternoon time frame?
I think what I was thinking is it would be in the evening. What time were the other meetings, like the old meetings that used to be?
Started at 7, correct?
Yep.
It's been so long.
So there's still enough time in the evening to have open discussions if need be. During the noon meetings, I think it's hard. I don't want to speak for Alina, but having full-time jobs, like we have to get back to our offices or back to the streets to do what we do. And so it doesn't really give time for some of us to be able to actually interact with the residents after a meeting.
Discuss how everybody's time would be affected then, because we have department heads that would have to stay over, things of that nature. So don't live necessarily close. What are your thoughts, Trustee Zira?
I like it the way it is. I advocated for the change then. I think, and I did that on behalf of department heads, request, to tell you the truth. So there's that piece, but there are many other pieces of this for me. And one of them is that it's very sort of middle class, I think, this belief of more people being able to be available in the evening. I think working class people are very familiar with the issues around working second and third shift. And when I hear that, I always think about the fact that we've got an awful lot of residents who aren't available in the evening as well. So I didn't just wait on an evening meeting time. And I guess those are my biggest reasons that I still like. I think the other, I'm sorry, I'll get right to you, Carol. I guess the other thing that I want, there's also a piece that we continue to try to emphasize in that the public meetings are not the best forum to solve problems. They're great to hear from people, but we can't then go just, get it done. Whereas when someone calls with an issue and calls the department head or calls the trustee of their choice or calls Mr. Huffman, the wheels are turning that day and things are moving. And it's really a much more effective and responsive system for residents to be able to contact us person to person. So that was all I wanted to add.
Well, as the only resident here, I guess I'll say my piece. I hear from residents in the view all the time that they would rather have the meetings in the evening as they were for God knows how many decades. For the fact that many people are working at this hour. They can't take off. There's also the matter of these meetings are just twice a month. It's not like we're asking you to give up your free time, 30 days at a time. We're just talking about evenings. And it is very inconvenient for a lot of people to get here at noon. I understand that I think the availability of the county people and such better at noon, but it's terribly inconvenient. If you've talked to any residents on this subject, you'll find out it's terribly inconvenient for most of them to get here. Now, to me, it doesn't matter, I'm retired. But a lot of working people think schedule. As it was,
My experience, early on here, when the meetings were that late, was also that by the time you got to the executive session, after a lengthy meeting, that you're then in the position as board of making, decisions about people's livelihoods and their raises and their job performances and everything else at, I kid you not, 11:30 at night. And I also just really felt, when I made this decision the first time, that just wasn't fair either. And the fact that we did it, for years one way means why can't we do it for a few years another way and give more people who work different
well,
hours
we
a
have
chance?
been doing it for some time at noon, and all I hear are complaints. I can't go to the meeting at noon, I'm working. As far as making decisions at 11:30 at night, well, I mean, I'm 72 years old, but I think I have a clear enough mind that it runs into 11:30 noon or midnight, but that's part of the job. That was part of the job when you took it on. You knew the meetings were at night, but no, now we've changed them to noon. I mean, I go to these noon meetings and I see Bobby and me, maybe one other person. It's not because they don't want to come, but a lot of people are unable to come. And I think the citizens that are working in this township have the right to attend these meetings. And they should need to be at a time that are convenient for most residents, not necessarily just convenient for all of you. As I said, it's a couple times a month.
I can see both sides of it completely, having been on both sides of it myself. The late night meetings can get really late, and I can see the argument that the early meetings, not everybody is able to attend. So I do kind of like the idea of maybe having one in the afternoon and one in the evening, like we have now at noon. My only hindrance would be figuring out how we're going to transition back into that with these guys. It's not that big of a leap, a jump, or a hurdle, but as Trustee Sarah pointed out, our meetings are, as far as time-wise, 7 p.m. seems way late to me.
Well, let's not make it any later than 6:30, because if I'm working downtown and I have to work to 5:30, it can be a real pain to try to get through that traffic.
Sure.
I have done that for years, trying to get, when I work downtown, just getting out of there can take 45 minutes. So we need to have it at a time that would be convenient for residents. I mean, it's the residents that you're serving here. It's the residents that need to put their say into these meetings. Now, I realize in the past, we've had some hellacious arguments, nearly fights break out of these meetings. Some of those people have moved on.
That's not my concern.
No, it's not my big concern either.
But it's what led to 3.5-hour meetings, and I'm happy we don't tend to have 3.5-hour meetings anymore. So, I will add that we've all worked hard to add the civility, and I do think it's much better than it was a handful of
I
years ago.
agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see any need for some of what went on in the past,
Sure.
because it was getting nothing done.
Yeah.
And it irritated a number of people that I know stopped going to the evening meetings because of the arguments and the confrontations.
Sure.
Hopefully, most of that is in the past. As I say, we've had some residents move on. Anyway. I just think that you're here to serve 3 evenings a month. even if it does run to midnight, is such a big deal. I mean, it's part of the job. You need to listen to the residents and their wishes. Because I know a lot of people that would be here if it wasn't at noon, but you can't just take off work and come to a meeting like this. I would be happy if you want to split it, one at noon, one in the evening, at least give the working people of the township a chance to be here.
As I said, I'm willing to entertain it, I'd like to mull over maybe with everybody else department head wise and see what their thoughts and feelings are as per time and rotation, that kind of thing. If you guys are okay with that.
Okay. Number 10. So I've been, doing, some research and talked to, Aaron from Purcell and Kim from Otarma and 2 different township, administrators from neighboring townships, about different practices with the social media policy. So I just grabbed a few things for the board to just start considering. So big picture, I thought we could talk about parts of this today and just kind of see where your inclinations lie. And then start pasting together a little bit of a draft from that conversation to then consider more substantively in the future. So I'm not trying to like get to a policy today, but rather just sort of get the conversation started with some common assumptions. So I put this little handout together of some things I found. This first one's from an Otarma presentation. Talks about just some of the common mistakes people make with their social media policy. And I want to just from the outset just remind everybody that the social media policy we have right now in our employee manual covers half of what we're talking about. It covers like what personnel should and shouldn't do with their township devices, or when they should or shouldn't post, and what they should post or not on their personal pages. So it's more kind of employee focused. And this conversation is kind of more about the organization at large and how we want to look at social media. So some of the mistakes of things that you'll see in sample policies that are not recommended are those statements of reserving certain rights to delete certain comments based on certain issues. When you see that list, and you will in some of the samples that I give you, it changes all the time because different case law happens. It's very First Amendment related, and those lists of what cannot be removed or what can be removed are really just not recommended practice. And then I just highlighted there also that piece about not addressing the official employer account, which is really kind of what we're talking about today. So the second piece is also from Otarma, a different presentation. And again, you can kind of see that reference to the 2-part policy. I put, done by the one we've got regulating kind of the employee conduct on and off duty part. But what we need is that first statement where we regulate our own information as an organization. And oftentimes you will see in some of these samples that communication is one way. It's informational, a lot of dialogue back and forth, which creates a lot of sort of libelous kinds of situations and tricky issues for organizations. So just some things to keep in mind would be, who's authorized to post. These are just their recommendations about components. What specific social media platforms do we want? Do we want to be on 5 different things? Do we want to be on? I'd take some input on that piece right now from the board so that we can.
I mean, we're already on Nextdoor and Facebook, and now YouTube. I'm comfortable with that. I don't see a need for a Twitter or an Instagram account.
Yeah, we do have a Twitter. that I wasn't really aware of. So are we good with closing that one down and keeping it more streamlined?
I'm fine with that, yeah.
Facebook, Nextdoor, and YouTube?
I mean, I think those are the three most common platforms. Instagram and Facebook kind of work together, but I'm not as familiar with Instagram as I should be, maybe. But,
Okay.
I think it's informational enough.
Well, you know, and as like all of our policies that we aren't carving stuff in stone that can never be amended.
Facebook and Instagram typically have two different audiences that we're finding that we're reaching, older versus younger. Instagram seems to be Facebook, will actually give you the ability to add it to your Instagram account, or to your Instagram account.
So we can have both for more reach.
Glenda, you want to add an opinion here? On different platforms?
Yeah, I think what Chief Fraley said is true, although as a strictly photo platform, and it's kind of falling away from that. It kind of wants to be Twitter, and I mean, let Twitter be Twitter and let Instagram be Instagram, but Instagram wants to be Twitter, and it also wants to be TikTok. And TikTok skews to a much younger audience, but Instagram kind of wants to go that way. So I don't know exactly if Instagram is where we want to be to hit our audience. I think keeping our Twitter in the future, that might be important for us, to be a more immediate platform. It doesn't hurt us to just keep it sitting there because it's there if we need it. But I think currently, until we find some reason to do otherwise, I think hitting the Facebook really hard is good, and I think the Nextdoor is really good. I would like to see us boost some posts to pull in a bigger audience, to show people who we are and what we do, and that would gain us a little bit more traction, I think, on Facebook.
So media too, so it might be like a tool that we kept in mind if there's ever sort of crisis communication stuff that needs to happen in some other form too.
Get there, maybe. We can always reevaluate in the future as well.
Yeah. Okay. And we're gonna work on this draft, so we can have a conversation again, so a lot of policies have, you know, who's authorized to post and, kind of actually laying that out. We have a situation where we're a little bit decentralized. Some departments have pages, there's centralized pages. So different people are posting in different places. I think we're comfortable with that and we like that, and that's our situation, but it's still recommended that you kind of outline what that structure looks like, who that is. There's also a thing that's a pretty pressing thing about, you know, access in terms of username, passwords, and how those are kept. And I'm pretty sure we've got a backup system now, right? That is Mr. Huffman making sure he's got log on that he's going to be coming. Similarly, record maintenance. We're creating public records all the time. And I'm going to speak a little bit later to how many posts do we really need. I'm all for bumping up the algorithm. I'm also all for not diluting our presence down to a point where people scroll by our posts. So somewhere in there, I think there's probably a happy balance. And one thing to keep in mind about that is that we're going to have to figure out what we're doing about public records, retention. Lots of folks put the post on their website as well, and then they've got their website archived. There are services you can pay for, and I really rather hope we don't have to go there, that would archive for us. Mifflin, the person who does their PR person, just files those. It keeps them on our own storage media and duplicates your posts and keeps records of them that way. So that's something else we're going to need to, okay, and also that sort of disclaimer on your page so that commenters do know that they're and can be released on request to anybody who requests them. So lots of little pieces, parts out there. And page And, again, we'll need to have that kind of conversation about what is it that we want, what's our goal here, what do we want to post? You know, do we want every kind of public service announcement that we can find, and so that we're posting every day? Do we want things to always be relative to the township in some way? What, so those kind of guidelines are, I guess, what we can talk about next. What's some just primary feeling about that difference?
I mean, it's always important that it, for me at least, that whatever we're posting has something to do with the township or another entity that lays within the township. But it's also important to point out that we're not creating a public forum. This is for information purposes only. Here's the information. Please share and like it. Spread the word. Friends and neighbors kind of deal. That's been my perception of it since the beginning of us using social media. Because we do have to be extremely careful of what we do. And, I don't think that somebody should be expecting a back and forth conversation in the comment section of an informational post. Everything should be outlined in that post that they need to know. If not, go to the source and act, you know.
So I was looking at a website about social media, and this article, like the one sentence, I think that summarizes social media, I guess, within our township. It says, if your intent is to build trust and relationships with your community, you have to be social with them. So using our social media to get the produce market out there, to put community stuff out there, to be like in the know. But I also think that if we someone comment that has a question, I know we've talked about it before, but I think that there needs to be a general, thank you, like, I hear your concern, something, please send an email, phone call, and it's just a generic across the board.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So I threw a couple of social media policies in there from area townships. They're real different. This is just kind of for your information when you go home to look over stuff about what are some things you might want to see, what are some things here you don't want us to have in ours. The first one in Fairfield, you can see that they go down that line of this is not a public forum. This is about, communication and getting our tuning our own horn and getting our word out there. After that, we have one from Madison Township where they've actually apparently turned off third-party posting. So they're kind of the extreme other piece of that. And I do see that option out there. It's not all that unusual. It goes along with that idea of let's not.
Yeah, a lot of other entities, they just turn off commenting altogether.
Yeah, and I personally don't really want to go there. But I think, again, there's a balance in there somewhere of not complying to a bunch of stuff either. And then just as an example for you, the next page was an Nextdoor post that Columbus City Schools put out. It probably has more comments than this on it now, or Nextdoor has probably closed it. But when they decided to put out there that, masks are going to be required in the buildings this fall, they quickly got a very heated conversation about mask, no mask, vax, no vax, all the controversy surrounding this kind of hot button issue. And in 91 comments, there was never once when Columbus City Schools went back in there and said, but here's what we did, or clarified anything. And the same thing happened again, very shortly afterwards, the Ohio Department of Public Safety put out a factual thing about the scam alert, and then everybody hopped on board with bunches of comments. Once again, 60 comments, nothing by the agency. Just let the community engage with it if they're going to, and that's their forum at that point.
Yeah.
So that happens, and it's totally practice out there. And simple things, some factual things, and have some boilerplate responses that direct people to the right person. It's keeping in our mind that our branding and our positioning statement continue to emphasize that human-to-human personable touch of this township, that you can call the chief of police, that you can talk to the actual person who's gonna make the decision or make something happen for you, and that is, I think this is an opportunity to continue to stress that in that kind of boilerplate language that we're talking about, to get in touch with this person or that person. More best practices, this one from local government, again, just, you always consider, even if it's appropriate to post, what is the post? Again, we're coming down to those guidelines of what to include. And to, in a reply, to not talk outside of your expertise, get that person's knowledge base involved if necessary. And then finally, Hamilton County does some, I'll just let you read that at home, but they have a process where if an elected official is gonna respond, then they have a process that they go through. And I'll just let you take a look at that. We can kind of talk about it when I get you a draft or something, in terms of whether we need to do something like this or not, would be the question. So, with that, let me see, I just jotted down some questions. Let me see if I have enough feedback to get started. Okay, so with the idea that we're creating public records, we talked about our overall goal. We talked about more informational than dialogue centered, but we talked about which social media. We talked a little bit about security. Those were my big items on my notes about this. So my goal would be to try and look at a lot of best practices out there now and just start trying to pull together a draft document for your consideration as a next step. If anybody wants to add anything to that conversation while I'm drafting, please do.
I guess I would add my 2 cents that I don't see a benefit to elected officials jumping in on social media and speaking on behalf of the township. So I don't know if you wanted to explore that right now, but seeing as you said you raised it as a question, I guess my vote would be, I wouldn't do that. I don't think there's a need for that.
Yeah, I think
we have
the only,
staff for that.
I think the only thing is, it is, what if somebody sort of addresses you directly, or, you know,
As it relates to my township functions, I would, I guess, defer to the email, my township phone number,
Right.
come to one of these meetings.
Yeah.
I agree with that. Line that nobody's intending to get tripped up, so.
That's all I got on that one, thanks. Okay, committee reports?
Alright, so I believe we were really close to 90 families when I left at about 5:30. We had about 3,800 pounds of produce that we distributed.
Yep.
It was very muggy and yucky weather, but we got it done. Again, we are always looking for volunteers. We do provide masks. We ask that everybody that comes through the line in a car or on foot mask up as well for the safety of everybody. Looks like we were 100 even by the end of the market.
Families?
100 families. So we look forward to the next one. We've got some things in planning that we may be sharing soon that are exciting, depending on how this Delta variant works out.
Chat things?
Some chat things. So stay tuned and we will update you as soon as we've got confirmation.
I'm sorry, did I miss it? When's the next one?
The next produce market is
August 27th.
the 27th, correct.
There's some nice produce at the 13th.
It was really nice.
Everyone finally, on a lot of our bare concrete floors, pretty excited about seeing how that turns out, and thanks to everybody who's playing hopscotch in the building and working in various areas in order to let floors get installed and staying off of them at the appropriate times, so. Mr. Hoffman, that brings us to you, I believe.
I'm gonna apologize up front, I was down one ear and the other ear just lost its battery, so I'm not
Uh-oh.
100% on board, so apologize if you ask questions and I don't quite understand it, you get one. First thing I had on there was a discussion regarding upcoming stimulus funds for sidewalks or paving work projects. I shared an email with the trustees I received from Franklin County Engineer's Office. It looks like it's actually funding through ODOTs. I think Franklin, Clinton Township would be higher likelihood of receiving funding because of the fact that we're one of 8 in the county as a opportunity zone. The money can be used. The projects need to be constructed between summer 2022 and December 2024. So I just wanted to throw that out there to have you guys think about potential projects that I can reach out to the county engineer's office to work on applications to try to spend.
Deadline for the application, is it November for the application deadline?
I believe so, but because of the timing of that, and it's not a large dollar amount project, we thought maybe we could find other projects that would be beneficial.
Are there beginning ideas right now? I mean, we don't get a chance just to get in front of this stuff, so, you know, they're just, projects that spring to mind as potential things to examine when you think about sidewalks or resurfacing or culverts?
Ferris Road, by far, if I were to choose,
That's county though.
we don't, okay. I was thinking of sidewalks, and this is not our funding, correct? This is a totally separate wave of
Correct.
funds. Okay, just clarifying.
So I'm thinking the pocket parks, that apron, it's not gonna ruin the edge of the road. That's the first thing that springs to mind.
Does that include alleyways?
That's the second thing that I was gonna say.
It says road,
Alleyways.
it just says road resurfacing.
Down to Elmore, Paramount. We could, I mean, that would be a good,
Yeah,
Okay, the eligible work according to the paperwork would be like sidewalks, roadway resurfacing, roadway widening, roadway full depth repairs, chip seal, guardrail, pavement markings, culvert rehabilitation, culvert replacement. Utilities is absolutely necessary for the above projects, so it can't be a separate project, it's incorporated. And then vegetation clearing again as part of one of the other projects.
It's actually at all, maybe that should just be something we could get his opinion about. But I was curious, yeah, do we just wanna pick our 2 worst roads and do some real road resurfacing? We know that we need it based on what Corey, gave us, earlier this season. Or do we wanna look at, you know, sidewalk, like, I thought of Ferris too because of the need, but I also thought of the Ferris roundabout that has to probably go in before I personally would wanna do kind of more planning around that.
I think
Elmore strikes me as another hotbed for potential sidewalk when it comes to pedestrian. And then we've got Northern Lights access and stuff like that to tie it to, in terms of that one piece. But that was the thing that crossed my mind.
So when they say sidewalks, does that include?
ADA rooms,
Yeah.
it should, yes. I mean, if it's new, it has to be
Maybe
to standards.
Corey, did you?
Would you review the sidewalk priority plans in both sides of township neighborhood plans? There's a sidewalk map that is colored for priority, sidewalks to come, you know, first, second, or third as we do them. I would just be curious that I'm not, you know, I don't have that coded in my memory at this point, but if we could just look at where we said before, where the county said before, where sidewalk priorities, that might help shape this conversation
In
too.
the township,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
had to work with public works and take a look at some of those.
And I have to kind of,
It's right in the plan, there's a map, right in the land use plan.
I have a possibly dumb question. Is it possible we would apply for more than one project? I mean, I know we would sort of pick our top choice. Is it possible we put 2 or 3 projects in the ring? You can help us figure that out, Matt.
I think the answer is yes, because on their fact page,
Yeah.
they had a question about if you're resurfacing 2 different roads in 2 different places, do you have to have 2 different applications? And the answer was yes.
Okay.
So like if you did a road over here and a road over the east side, then
Yeah.
need 2 apps.
Yeah.
And it is obviously maximum of $250,000 as well, which sounds like a lot of money, but when you get into projects like this, it's really,
Not very much.
it really isn't.
So
So if you guys, I'll work with Corey, if you guys want to shoot me some ideas, see what we can come up with for application wise.
sounds good, thank you. Anything else on your?
Avenue project, which is the Ohio Public, they said that the contractor has installed the mainline drainage facility that currently is installing sidewalks. So next steps will be the driveway aprons and planning, grading, and seeding. So that project is coming along, and I'm working with Works as well, to make sure that project keeps moving along. And reach out to the Central Ohio Community Improvement Corporation, which is the COCIC, in regards to 942 Chambers. They are ordering the asbestos survey of the structure. Once that is done, and hopefully no asbestos is found, I don't know what the age of the house. There might be some in there. If there is, then they have to remediate all that before they can go to the next step. So slowly but surely, steps are happening. That's all I have.
Great, thank you. Chief Gray, welcome.
Just real quick on that topic, we had an incident this morning over here. Someone was trying to get into the house apparently. We still have ownership as Linda, won't say the last name. COIC, when they take this project over, who has the authority over that if we have trespassers? Is what we need to legally know, I guess.
The authority to,
If someone is trying to go into that house, we've condemned it, but it still is the current property owner.
the way I look at it, it's still in Linda's name. So I guess if she wants to get into it, whatever, she would have that authority. I can confirm with COCIC, it was the first time I'm doing a project with them like this. My understanding is it's still in Linda Buckle's name. Hypothetically, if she wanted to go in and tear down the structure herself before we got to it, she would have that authority.
Right,
But
so if a question pops up where somebody on her behalf shows up to try to stop people from remediation or destruction, I guess we need to clarify who has the legal.
Chief, feel free to have a conversation with Julie on splitting some of these hairs and getting her opinion, I would say.
Yeah,
Because you're talking about some really fine.
We haven't had these issues arise, but this is
Yeah.
kind of a contentious
Yeah.
issue with this one, so
I would
if we have
encourage you to,
officers do something we shouldn't do or
yeah.
go above and beyond.
I'll follow up with COCIC on that.
Thank you. Chief Fraley, now I think we're ready for your section.
Yes, we'd like to request a PO in the amount of $11,720.85 payable to W.W. Williams for repairs to engine 61 from Fund 2111-220-323.
I'll second.
Just seconded.
Just seconded that. I heard it, sort of. Now we'll do the roll call. Trustee Jeffberger.
Sorry, what? Roll call, oh, yes.
Trustee Sword.
Yes.
Trustee Sierra.
Yes. Anything else, Chief?
That's all we have.
Thank you. Chief Jones?
The only thing, just an informational piece real quick, we were talking about social media policy and cybersecurity a few minutes ago. I didn't want to get in on what you were talking about. Just one thing real quick, I would throw out Mark Freeholt. He did all the social media training for the police department. He's also a subject head of policies for municipalities and school districts, major ones. So I don't know if one of the trustees may want to reach out to him once you're done with your policy, just for a quick review. And then on the cybersecurity issue, we are currently getting ready for an FBI CJS audit. I put a memo, I believe, out to the trustees on that. So we are currently underway with a cyber response security policy that we have to do that covers the police department and also the servers for the township. Because our information travels through that server, we technically have to have authority over that. So I'm working with our folks at IT Make Real, and that was included in one. We'll have some more conversation with the technology team on more matters I can't discuss right now. But just so the other trustees are aware, we are crafting that policy. Would have to be in place by October with some protocols that came out from the FBI. So we are working something up that we can incorporate it into township wide. We'll see.
Chief, I'm sorry, can you repeat all that? We couldn't hear it because of the truck.
I don't remember what I said.
I know.
No. We are currently getting ready for an audit through the FBI's Criminal Justice Information Systems. And we have to have new protocols in place for cyber response in case we have an intrusion or cyber attack, which would include our technology team here at the township. So I can't go into a lot of detail because of the nature of it, but we are going to have a cyber security policy for the police and the township server, and may incorporate into other department heads.
Anything else?
That's all I have. Next meeting, we should have some names to bring forward for new part-time officers, so we're wrapping those up.
Great, thank you. Superintendent Blake?
Good afternoon. First, I would like to have a discussion regarding the designation of parcel number 130001617, which is a vacant lot on Chambers Circle. Designate that as parkland.
Is that the lot with the
The drainage thing?
Yeah.
Yes.
It can't be though.
Have we had conversation with neighbors about this? Have we asked
Yes.
residents around the area how they're liking that idea?
Yes.
I can tell you, years ago, they tried to make that adult.
Anything else, Corey?
That is all I have.
Thank you.
I have a question for Tor. Thanks for getting the new picnic table.
Oh, you're
and
welcome.
the park bench over there, it looks nice. I was wondering, this picnic table is sitting awfully close to the intersection there, the Circle and Chambers Road. And I was wondering if maybe you'd move it in farther to that other group of 3 trees. I'm concerned about someone coming around that corner from either direction and, hit a slick spot on a winter's day and just crashing into it.
Carol, are you talking about the one for wheelchairs? When you say this one, are you talking about this red one that's wheelchair accessible?
No, I'm talking about the one on the other end.
Oh, okay.
Just to move it away from the street somewhat, maybe move it this way. There's another group of 3 trees there,
Yeah,
if that's possible.
yeah, we could definitely do that.
Okay. I have another thing I'd like to ask you about. I don't know. We had this garden, we had this built a few years ago, and I'm gonna come out and say I think it's an eyesore. It was built as one big unit. There's only a path about 18 inches wide to walk between the beds. Also, the paths, at the end of each path, there's a wooden board that you have to step over to get into the path. As a result, they're all weed-filled, hard to maintain, anymore. I don't know, tear it down, start over, or just tear it down. But right now, I see it more as an eyesore. I like what you all did on the east side with the 3 separate containers so that you can get a lawnmower or a person with a lawn chair in between the beds. This is all one unit. I was not consulted about the design. It was just sort of taken over by a person. And I think it's a mess. I don't know anyone over here. I think Rochelle and her family probably maintain your plots, that no one is redoing or, weeding the others. I don't know if your crew, I don't know, but it
Yeah, my husband's been, we had 2 pumpkins already, we have a whole, plot of asparagus, and then we've been maintaining the volunteer tomatoes and been dropping them off at our neighbors' homes on the circle, so people could have, tomatoes. But I know James would be, and you know this, Corey, James would be excited to either donate his time for the labor, if we wanted to reconstruct something else, he's happy to do that, if the materials are provided by the township. But I see it as, it does look, it is very messy because no one else is involved with it. But I mean, during COVID, almost every plot was full, like, not this past summer, but the summer before. And there's a lot of, really, tasty food that was grown there.
How does the weeding work in Case Garden?
Everybody that signs up for a plot is responsible for the weeding of their plot. If not, it is mowed down with a weed whacker.
Them and try to work in there.
How deep are those boxes over there, Corey?
They're about,
The ones over here are not very.
yeah, they're about 12 inches.
If we could part and lift them off, situate them.
The only thing about currently how the wood is, the wood is bowing on so I think it's like on the edges of the very outside. And there's rebarb that was, stuck there to reinforce them from, to Carol's point out, it not looking that great is the containment, or whatever the water. There's a water spigot and then there's this green box that keeps falling down around it.
Yeah.
That box should probably be built a little bit more structural or like.
We have the same problem at the
Okay.
Case Road Community Garden. I
Okay.
think you guys were looking into replacing the water tap boxes.
Yeah.
So,
And just as as I say, I don't think on. Now, with all the space we have over there, they could have moved it a few feet one way or another, but just as a note.
gotcha.
Worship that would have a garden plot. And this is a common problem, that there's initially a lot of interest, and then the one person who is doing it moves away, and the next wave of people don't pick up the baton. I have seen wheelchair accessible raised garden beds up really high, they can't be that deep, and that's just at a friend's house. So in my head, we kind of have to have a deeper conversation about how much do the residents want to do, what is our small government doing? I think the township is happy to provide the materials and do some of the labor, but,
Right.
in some ways, but the township has paid for the water spigots, they're built. So to me, that's sort of a long-term, the infrastructure's there,
Yeah.
we'll figure it out. And I agree with you, I knew when it was built that wasn't gonna be accessible, because I'm used to senior citizens and you can't step over,
Yeah.
you just can't step over.
And I think if we had more, like Corey mentioned, a path to, the rest of the view, that's just gonna make it easier for people to come over here. It's pretty dangerous when you're going around the curve, like the curves in the street, or even pulling out over here with, this easement with the bushes growing into it.
Yeah.
But we could laminate signs, just like we do for cookouts and stuff and we can say, wanna join the,
Yeah.
the garden committee, or whatever we wanna call it, and put information there. I don't know necessarily that we have, someone who is necessarily in charge of that, but my husband would be happy to do all of the labor, he's just
Great.
horrible at email. Like, he doesn't do email, to organize it.
Willing to work with James.
Okay, yeah, he could be the laborer, you could be the administrator. That would be great.
Okay.
I mean, as far as it's on the person who has the plot or who is running that community garden. So,
I was putting messages on next door about, we're gonna start gardening this year, and if you want a plot, contact me. This year,
because I've run the community garden on the east side since it started, it's a struggle.
oh yeah,
And if it comes down to weeds 4.5 feet tall, I don't call Corey. I go down there with a weed whacker and I weed whack it down.
if the bed was not in its current state.
Yeah,
I
sure.
My husband has a gas-powered whacker thing, be happy to come over
Yeah.
and cut down the weeds, but it's the access and we're two old people.
I totally get it.
Sure.
And I think too, it's part about maybe opening up our community just a little bit and inviting people from the apartment complex and these townhomes.
Yeah.
Because they don't have land that maybe they could do this, and
Yep.
we, during COVID, made friends with a lot of people who did live
Yeah.
in apartments who were
Yep.
coming over because they didn't have the property, or they wanted to do something more than just container gardening. So it would probably take, just a little distribution of flyers saying, you're welcome, we welcome you,
Yeah,
we want
come
you
on
to use
down.
this,
Yeah.
you know?
Sure. That's the beauty of it, right?
You all had like a nice, I heard you had like a plant swap in the spring.
Yeah.
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 I think we're closer to a solution.
I think about a dozen people,
Yeah.
10, I don't know.
Yeah,
Show up at the plant swap, which surprised me, that was more than we've
And there
had.
were people here from Grandview, there, I
Yes.
mean, it was really a
Yes.
diverse group of folks who came in terms
Yes.
of geography.
It was nice.
Forty Village, I talked to somebody from Victor.
But we all agree, if it's not easily accessible and it looks like weeds, people don't feel like jumping in.
No, I mean, who wants to garden in some place that looks like a, you know,
Right.
So if James, if I'm hearing this correctly, if James wants to tomorrow go out, things like I said, but he's not, he's